Thank you. I think next on our agenda is a bond update from Bob McGraw. Welcome back.
Dan
and friends,
and
Dan and friends. And
can you use Eldon's chair?
Let's go. So, good evening. I'm Bob McGraw with C2AE. It's good to be here with you again. Joining me are Dan Lamore with Chrisman, Construction Manager, Paul Twigg with Barton Mallow, your Technology Security Consultant for the project. So, pretty exciting news on the enrollment. That's certainly a testament to the outstanding program you've created, the Lansing Pathway Promise. And of course, a few months ago, you passed a bond issue to develop facilities to support that promise. So tonight we're here to talk about the first projects that are part of that Pathway Promise bond. So the biggest one, the most exciting one, is the Fairview Elementary, which will become the Pat and Gill Academy. That project is finished with design. We're in the midst of wrapping up the construction documents, and we will be bidding that this winter, and construction will start in the spring, although that's not really totally true because we're going to do a little bit of work early here yet this year because we're anxious to get going, and we know you are too. We're building an addition at the south side of the existing elementary school, and the ground there is a couple feet lower than the floor of the building, so we need to raise it up. And the soil in that area is not as, for lack of a better word, dense as we'd like it to be. And so we're going to bring in additional sand to raise that up to the floor level and allow it to settle over the winter and compress those soils and make them as strong as they need to be for the new addition. So that'll be happening shortly.
It is happening.
Happening as we speak. So you will see a construction fence, safety fence, and then shortly you'll be seeing trucks hauling in sand and spreading that sand within that fenced area. Additionally, Riddle and Averill are going on simultaneously. You may recall we have some what we call general building projects in the bond project. So things that would help you with your operational program, operational expenses, help reduce those. So some energy improvement types of things, as well as some things that will help you from a maintenance standpoint. So we'll be doing things like some window replacement, some mechanical upgrades, replacing some flooring, revising restrooms so they're more accessible, those types of things. Again, both of those projects, we are wrapping up the construction documents here in the next few weeks, and those will be going out to bid in the winter, and we'll be doing construction basically next summer. There might be a couple things we start before school gets out, but generally those will be summer construction projects. Additionally, we're in the midst of developing information on furniture projects for the elementary schools. As you recall, we have dollars in the bond program to replace some of the furnishings, particularly focusing on student furnishings in the classroom. We're looking for furniture that is not only durable, but we're looking for furniture that supports your educational program. So furniture that's much more ergonomic, much more flexible and lightweight in terms of your ability to move it within the classroom so that the teacher and the students can rearrange that furniture in a variety of ways to support learning, be it individually, in pairs, or in small groups of 4 or 6, but provide a lot of flexibility for instruction in the classroom. One of the things that I think has been pretty exciting about that is the superintendent suggested it would be good to get student and staff input. When we agree, that's always a good thing to do. Or Mr. Spatafor, I guess, suggested that. So we're doing a couple things. We organized a tour with the help of some local businesses. We were able to secure a small bus, and we were able to get a number of manufacturers to loan us some furniture samples that we loaded on the bus, and we took around to a number of the elementary buildings in the district, and we're able to have students and staff try out those tables and those chairs and give us some input as to the ones that they preferred. So we just gathered that data, and we're in the process of analyzing it, and that'll certainly be one of the things. We're also doing an online survey for those who weren't able to partake of the actual tour, so we can gather some additional input that way. But we'll be using that data as one of the elements to help us formulate what furniture we would prefer to have, what the basis of our specification will be going forward. So again, that'll be another project that we bid yet this winter, and then we'll be installing that furniture over the summer. Questions so far?
Let me just make a clarification if I could.
Sure.
The name of the site that we're building at is yet to be determined. So just so that we're not calling it the new Pattongill, we're not really quite sure what that name's going to be, and the board would make that decision at a later date, just so that everyone's clear about that. The furniture, I want to be really clear with the public. The furniture that we're talking about right now is just for pre-K 3. There will be a time when we'll talk about 4-6 and high school at a later date, but right now we're looking at pre-K 3. Is that right, Bob?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And the furniture, did you had,
To micro.
thank you, you had in consideration the input from teachers?
Yes, as a matter of fact, as I mentioned on the tour, the students and staff were involved in giving us input. And then we also have a input group, a committee, if you will, which consists of a number of teachers throughout the district that we're working with on a more intensive level to review the various options for furniture and give us input and direction. Good question, thank you. All right, with that, Paul will give you an overview of some of the things that are going on from a technology standpoint.
All right, thank you. Toward the end of the summer, the first step that we went through was an assessment of the existing technology systems. We looked at infrastructure, we looked at classroom equipment, and it was as teachers were moving back into the spaces, so we had an opportunity to ask building administrators as well as teachers about what they see going on. What we saw was that there's some very exciting programs going on in the district, some one-to-one programs, exciting things at the magnet schools, but there was a overarching theme that some of the core things like the network and the wireless infrastructure might not be able to support everything that the buildings are trying to do. So the infrastructure became the first priority to tackle with the bond projects. It also coincides well with a government program called E-Rate through the Universal Service Fund, and that was a program set up for schools and libraries to get funding for doing these type of infrastructure projects. The bids are out on the street right now for the network, wireless, and the replacement of the phone system. We plan to get the bids back before Christmas to give us some time to evaluate them throughout January, and the board and the subcommittees will be updated in time for us to bring it before the board for approval at your February board meeting. At the same time, we're starting to do planning for the classroom equipment and the security systems that will be going into each building, hand in hand with the construction projects. We started meeting with building administrators, some teachers, technology staff, and looking at not only what does the bond need to accomplish, but what are some of the long-term goals and what's the educational vision, and how does technology fold into that. We're starting the same discussions next week with Ms. Mansky and her staff on looking at what are the safety needs within the buildings, and hoping to accomplish all of this so that we can do the first round of the buildings at the same time that the buildings are being renovated. So hopefully this summer at both Riddle and Averill, the technology systems will go in place, while the infrastructure pieces will happen district-wide. You can't really do a phone system at 2 buildings and not do it at all the rest of the buildings. So. I'm sure we'll be giving you further updates as we get farther along in the planning process. So, any questions on either the technology or security portions? Mm-hmm.
The security planning, could you elaborate on that a little bit more? I mean, what does it entail? The outside of the buildings, the inside of the buildings?
Sure. Well, you already have, that was purchased in recent years, a good access control system. So for visitor notification and to help replace your key system. It's in good shape. When the construction projects have to go through, there'll have to be some modifications, but it's in good shape. What you don't have right now is a solid video surveillance system at most of the buildings. You do have camera systems, but if you think of the camera that's on your phone, you know that if you had one 4 years ago, it's so much better now.
Yeah.
So when the new system goes in place, it'll be higher quality, more flexibility for people when you're viewing and searching for data, the ability for outside responders to maybe look in a case of a situation and see what's going on in the building. So we want to improve the quality of what you have, expand some of the coverage, and give you some additional capabilities.
Mm-hmm. So you are selecting the company, you are placing the additional needs yourself, I mean, Chrisman is?
So we'll, after we meet with the district and come up with the needs, then a design will be done, and like all of the other bond projects, bids will be issued so that security contractors can bid on that work, and all of that information will be brought before the board for approval.
Okay, thank you very much.
Your security or safety is totally geared to technology, cameras, and access. Is part of our building structure going to look at some safety features as well?
Yes. You wanna,
Yeah, we'll be getting into that in a minute with
Okay.
what we're doing at Fairview.
There's some
Okay.
good examples in the Fairview pictures that you'll be seeing shortly.
Okay.
All right, let's jump into some of the pre-construction work.
My part of our report is to talk about some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. Our biggest amount of activities was design activity, as you know, and Bob is going to show you some pictures, and it's looking terrific. But there's a lot of work behind the scenes, a lot of interaction with the steering committee and Chrisman and Barton Mallow and CTOE. The majority of that work is on the cost estimating, but the first bullet point there is to talk about the sequencing and scheduling. So this is a great time for us to do the planning of what projects go first, what priorities they are for the school district and all the needs, and establish an overall schedule for each of the projects for each of the 5 years. And then that also includes the scheduling of the activities during this winter to get ready for the spring construction starts that Bob mentioned. So a fair amount of work goes into scheduling and sequencing, and that's all coordinated with the steering committee. As far as the cost estimating, as I mentioned, that's our biggest amount of work. It's really behind the scenes work, but it involves a lot of people. It's the entire steering committee, CTOE and Chrisman, and when we do a review of an estimate, there can be 15 people in the room, and it's very detailed. So we try to do 2 to 3 estimates for each project. 3 would be the norm. Some of the smaller projects may only need 2 estimates depending on the situation. We do what we're called as a schematic design estimate, which is the first milestone that Bob and his staff achieve. Then there's a design development estimate, and then there's a construction document check if necessary. So on Fairview, on the unnamed school, the anonymous school, we have done 2 estimates, SD and design development. And it's going well. That's roughly $20 million worth of work. And then on Averill and Riddle, we've done the first round, which is a schematic estimate, and there's another estimate coming shortly. So the great news is that we're tracking really well in the bond budget, and we're slightly underneath the bond budget, which is just, it's fantastic to hear. We'll track all that through this year, and we'll receive bids in the winter, and we wouldn't look to make any decisions for, if we find that we're under budget, we wouldn't look to make any decisions early about what to do with that money. We would work with the steering committee and board facilities committee to make decisions farther on down the road. But we should just be thrilled that right now we're tracking on the budget. And there was a lot of work that went into that. We still, even though we're beneath the proposed budget, we still took the time as an entire group to look for best value for design. Look for ideas that can be less costly and still achieve what we want to do. And so we received quite a few cost reductions through that, and it was great collaborative work, and the school district participated in it, and they were very helpful. The next thing is the bidding and award of the current work on Fairview that Bob referred to. So this is consolidation of the soil to prepare for next year. So really, we have to do about 6 weeks worth of work, and then we just shut down and let the soil do its thing. And that load will compress the soil so that it's ready to receive new footings. And so we'll keep that fenced off, and it'll sit idle for the winter, and we'll come back and get an early start in the spring. It should be ready to go. But we went through a normal public process to procure those bids. It was successful that we received good bids and within reasonable budgets, so very happy with that, and local contractors as well. We're getting ready to do the bidding preparation for the rest of Fairview and Riddle and Averill, and those will happen in winter, late winter, and so that we can be ready to go in the spring with receiving the bids, analyzing and coming to the board to get approval, and then awarding subcontracts to the various contractors. There's a lot of work that goes into that, and that accounts for, I guess I would say 40 trade contractor agreements, something of that nature, maybe even more. And we always hope that we'll see local Lansing companies get that business. Then the last thing that I would report on is the outreach. And while it's a smaller task, keep going? The outreach is a smaller task from the standpoint of man hours, but it's a really, really important task. And that's where we are going to seek out local contractors and workers to do this work. And we know that's important to this community, and we know that we have an important role to lead that process and get that message out there. So we've done a little bit of outreach for the first package. The outreach for this needs to be much bigger, and it has various tasks associated with it. But some of the tasks will be actually having a large meeting and bringing contractors in and introducing the project to them and encouraging them how they can participate and what their role is, and hearing from them also if they have specific needs to make them a better bidder, and that we can help them with. So we look forward to that. We do that on all projects, and we just want you to know we know that's really important for Lansing. So that's really the.
We do that annually.
Yeah, well, we'll do it. Bob said, are we doing it annually? We'll do it as we award projects, so roughly annually, yeah. So that's really all of the non-design stuff, but unless, did I see there's a question, Peter?
Well, it's not necessarily a question, but we have discussed in our meetings the possibility, and actually you're going to look into it, of breaking down some projects so that smaller contractors could bid on them, because taking a project, segmented it in different smaller projects. We talked about that, and that's what you're going to be working on. So it couldn't be done on this particular project that's going on in terms of the soil remediation or the work at Pettingill, at Fairview. But for future projects, depending on the size of the project, to look at ways of breaking down the project so that smaller contractors are able to bid. And I think that's probably what you're also going to do with them, as far as to make them, or to help them be able to participate.
So that's absolutely part of the outreach that I talked about. And so we did have a great meeting with the Board Facilities Committee to talk about that, and we feel like we have clear direction of what the goals are. And so we will try and be as creative as we can, and we'll structure packages to accommodate the known contractors in the community. And then from there, we have to just give everyone fair opportunity in a public bidding process.
Thank you.
It's not on your slide, but one thing that I realized as we were going through this, I haven't talked about what's coming up. So just to whet your appetite a little bit, the next projects that we will be turning to, even though we're not finished with these, but we're already starting to think about them, will be designing the new Eastern High School at Pattongill, and I believe Post Oak, and I believe the athletic fields at Eastern, I think. Anyway, I don't have that committed to memory, but I think those are next up. So starting in January, our team will shift gears and start working on designing those projects. But before we do that, let's give you a little idea of what Fairview is, how that's shaping up and what it's looking like. So we worked with a design committee who gave us input throughout the process of designing the project. And that was made up of staff and principals and a parent representative at both Fairview and Pattongill. We worked with them, developed recommendations, and then reviewed those with the steering committee. And then, of course, those were also reviewed with the board facilities committee. So here's what we came up with. There we go. All right, so in terms of the site plan, I don't know if everybody can see my little red dot, but Grand River is up here at the top of the image. Saginaw's down here at the bottom. Fairview Street Avenue is over here on the right. The existing light blue rectangle, that's the existing Fairview School. The dark blue sections are additions that we'll be putting onto the building. One of the major things that we wanted to accomplish on the site was to improve traffic flow and increase safety at drop-off, at arrival and dismissal. So one of the things you may notice is that we have a expanded parent drop-off on the north side of the building. Parents would arrive off of Grand River, loop around this direction, and then we have a much longer drop-off space to allow for more queuing of cars. So this would be a one-way flow, come in from the north, wrap around, drop off, and then exit out onto Fairview and go either north or south and or east or west, depending on what your need may be. So that we can keep people cycling through that and minimize traffic backups during that process. And then buses, instead of also being part of this current process on the corner, we've pulled them totally out of the mix with parents. They will enter off of Saginaw down here at the bottom, and they will park along this sidewalk here, and they will pick up and drop off students in that location. And then they will continue exit out onto Grand River at the north, and we'll line that drive with the existing street over here, I forget the name of it, so that we have a four-way intersection, which is a much safer way to do it. Staff parking will be along this bus drive. It's much easier to coordinate the time of arrival and dismissal of staff with the arrival and dismissal of buses, so that works well together. And then visitor parking, there'll be a lot up here at the north for visitors to enter the building. We're creating a new front door and a new entrance or welcome center here at the northeast corner of the school. And so then visitors can park and enter the building at that location. This will be a secured entrance vestibule, so at whatever times you decide are appropriate, visitors can enter into a vestibule. The doors would be locked on the inside of that vestibule, which would require them to enter into the office welcome center and be greeted and received before they go any farther into the building. And we'll talk more about that in a second. The new additions kind of create a natural courtyard, if you will, at least on three sides. We will fence the fourth side and use that little more private space as the playground facility for the school. The one thing you don't see on here is what we're doing with stormwater detention. We looked at a number of different options. We looked at a stormwater pond similar to what is currently at the corner at Pattongill. We looked at rain gardens. And eventually, we decided that the best thing to do would be to put our storm detention underground in this green spot over here. So it's out of sight, and it's as safe as can be. Nobody can access it. That also gives us the added benefit of leaving this space as green space so it can be used as a multi-purpose general play field. In terms of the floor plan,
Parents, teachers, conferences, can they park in this green area maybe, or?
that's,
Because it's going to be more students there.
Yeah, that's
You did
always-
a good job in the other area, but
That's-
I am concerned about who parents, teachers, conferences.
yeah. And we appreciate that concern. That's always a challenge with any school, is designing enough parking. We want to make sure there's adequate parking for the majority of days and events. It's very difficult to design enough parking to handle those major events like a parent-teacher conference or a special athletic event or whatever it might be. We will be able to accommodate, people in the visitor parking spaces as well as the staff spaces, but this bus drive is also wide enough that we can get some additional parking in there as well. Will there be enough parking for everybody at a parent-teacher conference? Probably not, so we'll have to figure out how to deal with that, whether that's parking across the street at Pattongill and coming over the walkway or other options that we can explore. Okay. Jumping to the floor plan, this orange dotted line represents the existing Fairview School, although it's not totally accurate because this corner, as I mentioned, is a new addition for the main entrance and the Welcome Center. So again, a visitor after school starts would enter this vestibule, and these inside doors would be locked, and they would need to come into the Welcome Center, be greeted, and escorted or directed into the building from that point as appropriate. The building is organized into 3 wings. There's a lower L wing, a middle L wing, and an upper L wing. In addition, we have the green represent the classroom areas. These smaller blue spaces are shared breakout rooms, so a small group of students could break out of the general classroom and work in those spaces, and those are shared between classrooms. You can see there's different size spaces, so we have some that are for smaller groups, we have some that are for more mid-sized groups, and then we have some where you could take an entire class out there and do a special activity. So this one we call an extended learning area. It's right at the front door, so it not only serves as a special learning space, flexible learning space, but also serves as the main lobby for the building. So for open houses and conferences and those kinds of things, it creates a nice area where you can have coffee and donuts and cookies and those kinds of things, as well as displaying different things.
Before we move on, I think Rachel.
This gymnasium cafeteria area, is it going to be set up like a cafetorium at all? Or were we going to have space for plays and things like that?
I will get to that in just a second. So the other larger blue spaces are project labs, which is the other interesting feature about this building. So there's 2 project labs located central within the lower L and the middle L, and then there's 2 more project labs that are central to the upper L as well as the middle L. And those are flexible spaces that can be used for a variety of special projects, group activities, integrated thematic learning, very flexible environments with movable tables and chairs. Could even be places where you collaborate with local businesses to do special projects with the kids. So a lot of neat things can happen in those spaces. As we move towards the south here, we have the gymnasium and the cafeteria. So it's set up so that you can have dining at the same time that you're holding a PE class. There's an operable wall between those two. So after hours in the evening for larger events, you can open that wall and create a larger space. To give you an idea of size, this is large enough that you can have a high school-sized basketball court in that room. And so yes, it would be suitable for assembly type spaces. It does not have a stage in it, but we have the ability to have a portable platform that we could set up for those kinds of functions. So in terms of what it looks like, a little bit on the outside, on the inside, this is a view looking at the new front door, the new main entrance. The new welcome center is over here on the left side of the new entryway, which is here. There's a canopy at the edge of that drop-off zone to announce where the entry is, where the front door is, so it's very clear to parents and visitors where to come. The other thing you can see here is that canopy kind of tilts up at the end, so it kind of is symbolic, I think, of the aspirations that staff and students have to learn and grow and reach for the stars, so to speak. So again, it identifies the front door. As we move around the building, this is a view from Saginaw of the cafeteria on this end and the gym on the far end. And then the upper elementary wing is moving off to the left there. And then again, a view from Saginaw of the upper L wing with the gym and the cafeteria in the background. Yes?
Question, piggybacking onto what Ms. Lewis said about the stage. There are portable stages that are available to us if we wanted to create an elevated space for kids to be able to do performances.
Correct.
And we don't have that in the bond right now. That's not something we have eliminated in our thought process.
No, a portable platform, excuse me, is something that would come out of the furnishings budget for the building. And typically those are set up in modules so that they stack and fit together and can be easily stored away.
Are they in better constructed condition than the ones I remember from 1969? Where you're kind of wobbling on them and you get splinters?
Yeah, no, they make very good ones. I'm sure you've seen them at the event with Mr. Johnson last spring, you know, similar to what you'd see down at the Lansing Center.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you for the clarification on that. I would just hate for us to have a new constructed building and our students have to leave if they were to have a holiday performance and things like that. So, thanks.
And certainly if you did want to do something that was much more higher level production, then you could certainly take advantage of the auditorium at Pat Gill. One of the things you can see in this image is that both in the existing building and the new, but particularly in the new, we're using brick colors that are very similar to what's there currently, so that we can be complementary to the existing building. We're certainly not going to be able to match it exactly, but we will find a brick that is very close and very similar. We want to be energy conscious in terms of the amount of glass we use. So you can see what we're doing is at the classrooms, we're grouping that glass together all in one spot so that we maximize the amount of light that's coming in, but still make sure that we have enough solid wall space that we're getting good energy efficiency. And then a view of the addition onto the existing northern part of the school for the lower L wing. So this is from the north end of the bus drop-off. And this is a view of the courtyard from underneath the canopy outside of the current cafeteria gymnasium. And then moving inside, this is that entry vestibule, again with the secured entrance. You come into the vestibule, these doors are locked. You go into the Welcome Center office and are greeted. And then if appropriate, you'd be allowed to exit into the building, into the corridor from this door out of the office, Welcome Center. And then a view of the larger of those two extended learning areas. So this is that kind of lobby space at the front door, windows that look out over the entrance and the parent drop-off, hallway along the east or along the right side of the screen, and then again an open flexible space that you can use in a variety of ways for group instruction or for activities in the evenings. And then a view of the smaller one. There's one right by the gym that kind of serves as a lobby for the gym, and then it's extended learning for the upper elementary wing. Any other questions?
Dr. Rodriguez has a question.
I hope there is enough distance between Saginaw to the building and between Grand River and the building. There is no any noise bother their teaching and learning of the students. Is any materials there is going to be, or we don't need to do or deal with that? About the noise level.
No, that really shouldn't be an issue. You can see we're a significant distance away from the street to the school building itself. I don't know what that distance is offhand, but it's pretty significant. The gymnasium, when it's open, is 100 feet, so you can get an idea. We're probably almost 100 yards to that classroom wing. So, no, that shouldn't be a concern.
Mr. Lopez?
Thank you. Just kind of maybe a silly question here, but I like all the glass, you know. But in terms of efficiency for heating, what kind of R factor does the glass have that assures that we have maximum economy in heating our building?
I can't tell you the number right offhand, but I can tell you it's a very energy efficient window system that we'll be installing. So the energy costs for these new additions will be significantly lower than what you're currently paying for energy costs at the current Fairview School. It'll be much more energy efficient.
Just so people will know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ms. Ford?
Along the lines of the glass issue, is it going to be reinforced in some way to prevent breakage?
Yes, it'll be a safety glass. We're not looking to do anything special beyond that. I mean, there are, bulletproof type glasses. There's some pretty significant glass that you can incorporate, but they're very, very expensive and not typically used.
And
I think Mr. Harsley has a stack of plywood that we use frequently.
Right, and I was more concerned about, I know from past history, during the summer months in particular, we quite often have young people who don't have enough to do and decide it's a good idea to go and break in and, do some, some petty things. And that's why I was asking. Now, I wasn't as much concerned about it being bulletproof as I was just break-proof, for kids who are maybe trying to enter.
If they want to get in, they can find a way to get in.
Well, let's make it as difficult as possible.
Yes.
Ms. Rogers?
Well, I guess I'm going to kind of dovetail onto Mrs. Ford because I read an article probably a month ago, and 3M has come out with this treatment of glass that will have no breakage And, you know, I was kind of thinking, even for those buildings that we're not doing major work with, it might be worth us to take a look at the Shirley Fund and replace all the glass on the first floor, which could eliminate our break-in problems that we have sometimes that she was bringing up during the wintertime. So I'm, you know, I'm not the construction guru or anything, but that was just an article I read a month ago, and I really think we need to be concerned about the money that we're spending. We need to protect what we're putting into the facilities. We need to protect the equipment that's there, and if there is something out on the market that will help us do that, I think it's just something we ought to look into and consider. So.
And I stayed in a Holiday Inn last week, so if you want my advice, I'd be happy to provide it. Any other questions? I want to thank you all for this update. This has been a very exciting process to actually watch unfold, you know, go from ideas through design refinements and now to something that we're going to actually start seeing progress on. Very exciting, and we're all very interested in the progress as we move forward. Thank you very much.